Welcome to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat podcast, a platform that features professionals across a variety of industries and promotes growth mindset principles with a central pillar of championing the achievements of women. Our conversations explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to growth and empowerment. For this episode of Virtual Water Cooler Chat, Ashley is joined by Jennifer Che, a U.S. patent attorney and managing director of Eagle IP, a specialized patent firm based in Greater China. Having worked as a scientist, patent attorney, and executive over her 20-year career, Jennifer has a strong scientific foundation and a track record of driving creative and unique global IP strategies for various types of products, research collaborations, and business development deals. Jennifer is also a well-recognized speaker and is regularly invited to give talks in Hong Kong, the U.S., and Europe. She writes regularly on patent law issues and is the founder and author of ChinaPatentStrategy.com. Let's get started.
Good morning. Well, actually, it's good evening for you, Jennifer.
Yes, it's 9 p.m.
It is 9 p.m. and you look amazing for 9 p.m. I would be totally ready for bed, but thank you for doing this. Most of the people was like, how did you get your guests? I'm like, I don't know. I just go on LinkedIn. Whoever has interesting posts, I approach them. I mean, it was like, what? There's a 50-50 chance. So they could either say yes or no. And if it's a no, if they don't respond, I really don't take it as a no until they literally say no.
Right. Often it's maybe or maybe later, right? Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time people just don't have time and they don't get on the LinkedIn, and for whatever reason, not everybody is hopping on it every day. So, Jennifer Che, thank you so much. Official welcome. Tell me about your story.
Gosh, where do I begin? Usually when people see me in Hong Kong, they'll hear my accent, right? And they'll probably guess that maybe I was in America, and they'll say, when did you come back to Hong Kong? Because I live in Hong Kong. And then my answer is usually, I didn't come back to Hong Kong. I came to Hong Kong. And that's because I'm actually not from here, even though maybe you might think so. My background, my story, I guess, is that I'm born in the United States of Taiwanese immigrants. So I was born speaking Mandarin at home, but here in Hong Kong, that's not Cantonese and that's a different dialect. So people see me and they think I speak the local language, but I actually don't. So I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, and then spent my entire life there. Actually, my parents were teachers, so very stable job, get stable growing up in Ohio. And then went to MIT, moved to Boston to study chemistry. And to be honest, I always loved math and science, and I never was good at the humanities, actually, because I spoke Chinese as my first language, so English was always a little bit harder. So I kind of shied away from the humanities, and I loved science and math. So I definitely knew I wanted to do something science and mathy, and where better than MIT, right? So I studied chemistry there and kind of wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but at least I knew that I loved chemistry, science. And then when I was about to graduate, I was thinking about, well, what should I do with my career? And I knew I liked science, but my mom was pressuring me to be a doctor. So I took the MCATs and stuff, but I was like, I don't know if I want to deal with blood and all that stuff. And I wasn't sure if that was for me. And I also just wasn't sure if I was ready to go for a PhD. So I ended up finally just getting a job because I wasn't sure. So I went and got a research job. And that's when I started working as a chemist, a medicinal chemist at Millennium Pharmaceuticals. And I ended up staying there longer than I had planned. I thought I could just stay for 2 years. But, it was kind of like the dot-com boom and the genetics boom as well during that time. So it was kind of an exciting time to be in research. But I always knew that I was going to do something else. I was searching and searching, and I said, well, maybe I could do a PharmD. I like medicine. I mean, not medicine, but, like pharmacology. And then, but do I want to do a PhD? It seems like such a long path. And as I struggled, I at least knew one thing was I didn't want to be a lawyer. And I actually said that. I said, I'm definitely not going to be a lawyer. Okay. You should never make these statements, when you're young like that. So essentially what happened was I actually ran into a patent attorney one day in my 6th year of research. And then at the company, he said, oh, there's this thing called patent law where you help protect inventions. And if you are a scientist and you're interested, let me know. And I was like, oh, I'd never heard of this. So I went and spoke to him. And I really love the idea of a strategic kind of high level, not kind of sitting there in the lab and doing something every day, the same experiment, but actually being on the cutting edge of innovation, working with people on innovations where it actually worked. So I was actually quite intrigued. So I kind of decided, went and took the LSAT within a couple months, applied to law school, and then just like went. And I went at night, actually. So I worked during the day. I kept working as a scientist for about a year and then found another job as a full-time patent agent, which is great, at Vertex Pharmaceuticals. So that was another pharma company in the US. Worked there, finished law school, stayed, and then started to do other lawyerly type stuff like contracts and overseeing the IP of everything. And I was there for a whole decade. So it was really exciting to be with Vertex as it grew. And the company launched its first two drugs actually while I was working there. And just an opportunity to see a lot of stuff in house. But after 10 years, that's actually a long time to be somewhere. And actually, it wasn't my choice. I think I would have stayed, but I actually got laid off. There was a leadership change and they laid off half the department. And that was really, really hard for me, to be honest. You know, I think my whole life I've just been like going towards a goal, kind of just like striving. And then all of a sudden to like be stepped back and be like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing here? So that was a very difficult period, but I think it was really helpful for me to grow and learn about what is my identity in actually. Is it really my job? Is it really my title? Is it really all this school stuff, or is it something deeper than that, you know? So I think during that whole time, really a time of self-reflection and realizing that it wasn't really just about your career. At the same time, I was networking a lot, trying to meet all these people, and I did end up getting a really interesting opportunity consulting. So I started consulting with a startup company, and that was a totally different world because like I've been in-house at this very established pharma company, doing everything the perfect way, you know, and then you go to a startup and they're like, we don't have enough money. You have to do it in this budget. And we're going to take risks because if we run out of money, we're going to die. So you're like, okay, die is bad. Okay, so you learn about really prioritizing business risk and what is tolerable and what can you do within a budget? How do you raise money? So that was really interesting. And I did that and eventually joined as a head of IP at a flagship founded startup called Axcella. And I worked there for 2 years as a head of IP. And that was really a really fascinating journey as well. And then halfway through that, one day, my husband gets a call from a recruiter and they're like, hey, you want to move to China? And we're like, what? I loved my job. I actually didn't want to leave. I was head of IP at this really exciting startup. We had so much fun, and I just wasn't ready to leave. But it was a very long, year-long process. It actually took 1.5 years almost, like the whole negotiating process and going through the different steps. That's a long, long story in and of itself that I don't have time to talk about how we finally knew at the end of like a year and a half that that's what we were meant to do, that we were supposed to let go of the things here in the States and move over to Hong Kong. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in Hong Kong. I quit my job actually and I came jobless. So I thought that as a US patent attorney in Hong Kong, I would never be able to find a job because it's a different jurisdiction. You know, patent law there is a different language. I mean, even if it's China, it's like a different language. Who would need my help and my services? So I started to just look for part-time teaching jobs because I thought maybe that's all I could do. But miraculously, I met this woman. Her name's Jacqueline Loy. She's the founder of Eagle IP. She, at the time, had actually been thinking about succession planning a little bit. She was still like in her 50s, but she was starting to think about it. But she was like, how in the world am I going to find a US patent attorney who has the same qualifications and
And
skills and
voila.
I know. She's like, that's impossible in Hong Kong. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. And then lo and behold, I find out about her through my networking in Hong Kong and we meet. And for the first time, she's like looking at me and she's like, what is your calling? And I was like, what? And then it turned out that she and I actually share the same faith. And then it seemed like it was meant to be that she had been praying for someone like me. And then I just like showed up and we had a lot of the same values. And then I joined the firm. So I started to learn about China patent stuff when I joined Eagle IP. And that's been a whirlwind. And then social unrest and then the COVID pandemic hit. A lot of things happened in Hong Kong after I arrived, but I stayed with Eagle IP and then learned so much. And then 2 years ago, they decided they wanted to step back into retirement. And that was when we talked about me potentially taking over the firm. So we came to an agreement. As of 2023, I started, being the managing director of the firm. They're still involved as board members, but they are no longer active in the running of the firm. And that's been my last 2 years, has been this whirlwind of a whole new set of things to learn. So I think the moral of the story is never say never. And I didn't even mention other nevers I said. Not only did I say I'm never going to be a lawyer, I also said I'm never going to work in a law firm because I had skipped into in-house practice straight from when I started my job. And people say, oh, in-house is great. Why would you ever go back out? So I said, yeah, that's right. I'm never going to work at a firm. Ha, ha, ha. who has the last laugh. So here I am now. And then the third one was I didn't really ever plan on taking over. And my husband would joke and say, "You're going to take over the firm someday." I was like, "No, I'm never gonna, you know?" So
You're taking
I've
over
learned
the world
I
at this point.
I've learned my lesson not to say no if somebody suggests something outlandish because it might happen. I'm willing to go on this ride of this adventure of life. I don't know where it's taking me. I have not planned for any of this. In fact, I planned very different things and none of it worked out that way, but still, that's why I'm here today and that's how I got to Eagle IP. So, a little bit of a long story.
Okay, never say never is something that I immediately was like, oh yeah, she said that she's not going to be a lawyer. Many of the engineers turned lawyer that I interviewed, some of the people that I have interviewed, they actually turned lawyers after they found the engineering part boring because it's
Ah,
so focused. And
true.
then
Very
it's like
detailed.
not enough of a challenge. The few people that I interviewed that were engineer turned lawyers, women,
Hmm.
they
Okay.
were mostly like just got really bored focusing on the same thing over and
Yeah.
over again.
Right.
Yours is a
Right.
really different story, and I have a special love because I'm also from Hong Kong, and I left
Yes.
when like I think what your story is like a lot of is nothing venture, nothing gain. You were resistant
Mm.
in the beginning,
Yes.
but you
Yes.
didn't let the resistance persist and you just kind of went with it, and then
Right.
so many surprises came out.
Yes. Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that's really what I got from your story. And I obviously did some research, and I'm so excited to learn about this story is so amazing because it's like I've heard a lot of expat that went to Hong Kong, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of things going on with what's happening with the fire in Taipo. And I saw from your post that some of the people from your firm had experienced Turkey for the first time.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, it's like
Yes.
a Hallmark movie. So I'm so glad that you were able to sort of integrate and really
Yeah.
enjoying that part of it. Now, how long have you been in Hong Kong from the time that you move in there? Because I think you are like 7+ years in the managing position, but how long have you actually moved to Hong Kong? Not back.
I moved in 2017, so it is 8 years. So that's enough to get permanent residency. So I'm a PR in Hong Kong now. Once you stay 7 years, you're PR.
Want to hear my story of how I got started?
Yeah.
So my dad passed in 2017. I've
Okay.
been in
Yeah.
patent litigation for about 20 plus year at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 19 plus is with one firm. And I work on global litigations. So it's
Yeah.
all time zones.
Right.
And my mom has 3 children. I'm the eldest.
Okay.
So she only kind of has me as the daughter of the family. You kind of take care of stuff and take things
Yeah.
on.
Right.
I'm super type A, so I don't see how I can maintain like an outstanding and
Right.
not completely kill myself
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trying to do all things to all people.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
2019, I started having serious burnout because
Yeah.
2017 to 2019, I decided that I cannot deal with the emotion. So I just
Yeah.
keep working, working, working. And then my mom was
Oh.
also here. Mom doesn't
Yeah.
drive, so I need to
Right.
drive her to different things. So
Wow.
2019, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do something else. I've already been to other firms. Maybe I'll start something consulting of my own. So that's how I
Wow.
started Virtual Patent Gateway.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's really
Wow.
how it really gets started because like I don't believe the grass is greener on the other side.
Mm, hmm, hmm.
After over 2 decades, you've
Yeah.
seen a lot of stuff already. And
Right.
I don't think that any litigation firm really can accommodate a schedule, or at
Yeah.
that point, I'm sort of looking for something to fill
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
void of like, I could always try to make the attorneys and the clients richer, but what
Right.
about my deeper meaning?
Yeah.
And I
Right.
didn't know what
Right.
my deeper meaning at the time was.
Yeah.
So that's how it gets started. And then at the end of this month, it's 5 years.
Wow. Good
I
for
know.
you.
And I'm like podcasting, I'm writing
I
in books, I'm interviewing you.
wow.
But that's how VPG gets started. And I just
Got it.
wanted to
Mm.
share that with you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Let's,
I appreciate you sharing it. Thank you.
so you are in life sciences,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
then you focus on a lot of strategy, patent strategy.
Yeah, you can say that.
What makes you unique as a patent strategist in the Greater China region?
So you're right that maybe I do promote the fact that I'm strategic. It's interesting. The only reason I answered in a slightly different way was because recently I met somebody that was surprised that we do normal patent drafting and prosecution. They're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I thought you just did strategy," and I was like, "No, our bread and butter is still the normal patent stuff. You can only strategize so much. It doesn't take that long to give a strategy. Then there's all this implementation." And if we only do strategy, it'd be pretty tough to survive as a firm. That's why I kind of laughed and I said, well, I don't want to say we're only strategists, but we're strategic patent attorneys. So I just wanted to put that out there first. But yes, so I am a strategist. And I think part of the reason for that, one is just naturally the way my brain works. I've always been kind of high level and seeing a lot of different connections very naturally. So that's just the way my brain is. But of course, I believe that because my career path is kind of upside down in a sense where I started in house. So when you're in house, you're close to the business. You know the reasons behind why you're patenting something a certain way. You're also working with the scientists very closely. So you're always having this more kind of broader strategic sense of the patent portfolio in a way that it's much harder for outside counsel to have because they're the experts of the law. There is a person, they're not necessarily the person that gets to talk to the business side or the scientists as directly. So I think because I came initially with 10 years of that experience and then the startup where I was exposed to even more strategic, different types of strategic risk management decisions with the board, upper management, trying to communicate. Communication is really the main skill you need to have when you start to move up in management. It's not so much technically whether I can do a really good analysis, right? You can have a firm or a team member do that, but to be able to communicate to different people in different ways becomes really the key. So I think through a lot of my training in the US, I at least knew from a business perspective how to think about strategic patent portfolios because at a big pharma, you get access to big global portfolios. You talked about global litigation. It's kind of the same, right? Every country has
Mhm.
its own laws, its own deadlines, its own whatever. If you don't have that experience, it's hard to devise those strategies because you just don't know even what you're looking for. That's one aspect. But of course, the other is just working with businesses and knowing the timelines and what startups have to do. So taking that experience and then moving to Asia, the missing piece, I guess you could say, was the understanding of the cross-border type of issues. So even though I had done global strategies, China itself has much more specific issues, and even Hong Kong, right? That when you're on the ground and working much more closely about specifically China strategy, then you're learning a whole new set of things to think about. So the interesting thing that has happened. So it's all about the timing and kind of divine timing of when things happen, and it's just interesting because I moved to Hong Kong at a time when it was a banking and education powerhouse center. Things like life science, pharmaceutical, yes, there was maybe thought about it, but it wasn't a big deal in Hong Kong, to be honest. And then, China's patent law has been developing very quickly, and definitely starting around 2014, there were some changes and much bigger changes in 2016, 17, 18, up to 2020, lots of changes. And a lot of them harmonized in the areas of life science or even just other areas of the law to be closer to what the US has already had for a long time. So China was updating its patent laws. So I came at a time, it's interesting because I had all this experience and knowledge from the States, whether it be, oh, there's ways in which the regulatory law and the patent law are merged. And the way you think about drug strategy, you can't just think about patent law because it's linked to regulatory law. And in the Chinese patent law, this didn't exist back then before they changed the law, but in the US it did. So I was already aware of this stuff. But now I can take all that knowledge and apply it to what's happening in China and with sort of like a head start because I'm so used to doing it in the States. But then I'm here, learning about China as it's being literally created and put down and then taking my US brain and doing China strategies that are similar to the US, but with Chinese nuances of their law. But at least I know how to think about it. So in China, where they've just never had this kind of law, it's new for them, right? But I can take this US knowledge and work on the updated Chinese stuff. So that's the third piece of strategy. And that's why the strategies I offer are not only about global strategy and business strategy, it's also China specific. And if you're Hong Kong, of course, Hong Kong specific, there's Hong Kong government funding. And there's a whole nother game of strategies of how to take advantage of Hong Kong funding. Like that's its own strategy, which is of course very Hong Kong specific, but we do that as well because our clients are in Hong Kong and they want funding, right? So we've got funding strategies and then the mainland, of course, we've got the new China patent law and all the new laws and regulations that have come down recently and how to think about them, and they look a lot like the US style ones. So then you can use some of the same approaches. So in short, that is just a few of the different ways. And then I guess finally, just because our firm is blended in terms of our backgrounds, I'm a US patent attorney. We have three main leaders that are running the firm right now. I'm the managing director and I'm a US patent attorney, but we also have two Chinese patent attorneys. One is a Hong Kong born and bred local Hong Konger, perfect Cantonese and Mandarin. She can speak Mandarin as well, but Cantonese is her mother tongue. And then we have a mainlander who moved to Hong Kong for her graduate degrees and then stayed in Hong Kong. So she's a mainlander. So again, perfect Mandarin. She knows the Chinese culture. And between the three of us, we can really service a lot of different types of people. So there's even cultural kind of working with different people in that way. So yeah,
S-
that's kind of a start.
So the leadership, this is intriguing. The leadership is all women, the
That's
three.
right.
Oh
That's
my
right.
God. All right.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I want to hear from your perspective, what makes Eagle IP Limited unique? Obviously, the three women leadership and traditional Chinese are much more male dominated in like legal or like some of the major finance industry. So, how would you describe the Eagle IP Limited culture?
Now, I've never worked in another Chinese company. So I will first caveat by saying my experience is limited to the United States. So I don't want to make too many assumptions about
Yes.
what a Chinese or Hong Kong firm is like, because I personally have never worked in it. So what I can, of course, describe is what we're like. And then I guess everyone can just decide for themselves if that's typical or not of a patent firm. So we definitely value relationships with our team and with our clients. That is one of our most important values. So we spend time actually getting to know each other in the office. We will have biweekly
Turkey dinner.
language exchange. Yes, yes, of course, definitely. And I think that's pretty common that, offices will like to celebrate together. But we kind of go one step further as we do a language exchange every other week. So in a kind of multilingual environment like ours, usually people are trying to improve their English or they're trying to improve their Mandarin or they're trying to learn Cantonese. So we have this opportunity where we all sit around the table and we have to speak with a language that we're not good at. So I always use Cantonese, which I'm terrible at, and a lot of the, Hong Kongers will try to speak in Mandarin, or maybe they want to work on their English. And we just ask not questions about patent law, but just personal questions. If you could dream about this, what would it be? Or what is the one memory? Just kind of personal questions where people get to know each other. So we will focus on getting the team to actually get to know each other through these kind of workplace environments. So I will say we do that in terms of our values. I think a lot of the things that we value might be consistent with other firms, things like high quality and really caring a lot about our clients and such like that. So I think in that sense, those things I can mention, of course, but I'm not sure if it's what makes us unique. I think it really is that we really do care. Everyone's is a person, and we don't see them as what work they can output, but really kind of who they are.
I mean, that's really the key. People, who quit usually
Yeah.
quit because of the leaders, right?
Mm,
And at least that's what the sayings are. And it's leadership is a voluntary position. I mean, even if you are a managing director, the followers usually follow you because of your values and
mm,
different things. I wrote a book on the leadership catalyst and it's illustrated. And so I like to work with Gen Zers or illustrators to
oh,
make the topics a little bit less intimidating
yeah,
and
right.
also
That's
support
really
them
cool.
for their goals and vision and give them a little bit of money and not just give them the money, but hey, do the work and we collab and stuff like that. So I really
Yeah,
have been
that's really
very
cool.
intrigued about the leadership
Mm,
journey and like giving feedback is so difficult
yes,
because you don't want to hurt their feelings, but
right.
at times it's like it's a must in order to move
Yeah,
forward.
yeah,
You are also in the leadership position of AIPLA. Is it the Greater
yeah.
China Committee? And what is the specific committee? What do you do there?
Yeah, sure. I can. So the AIPLA is the American Intellectual Property Lawyers Association. So it is IP lawyers from all around America. That's kind of the organization. And they have a lot of subcommittees. So one is called IP practice in China. So
Mm,
it is really anybody that's interested in China, specifically in the IP area, which is what the whole organization is about. So what we do, I will say, we do a few things. One is we try to bring together people from both sides. So there might be Chinese patent attorneys that are in the committee. There might be Americans that are on the committee, and just to have a dialogue, right? Because it really is about communicating and just bringing people together, learning about each other, learning about, and this is an interesting time, especially as you know, just with the
mm,
geopolitical situation, all the more important, right, that the two sides are talking to each other. Another thing that we as an organization do is we will represent the AIPLA if we need to comment as a body on, let's say, new proposed rules or laws, right? So the USPTO will put out proposed rules and laws, and then different groups will comment,
that's
right?
been a lot.
Yes, exactly. So of course the CNIPA, the China National Intellectual Property Association, will also do the same thing. So that they will put out proposed rules, and then the AIPLA as a body wants to comment. So usually our committee would take the lead in gathering feedback on that. So I recently drove one of these for the regulatory rules. So they had a set of regulatory rules, and they maybe didn't impact, were not so friendly on some US pharma companies. So they definitely had a very strong opinion about some of these regulatory exclusivities. And they're like, it's favoring China because of there's a discount, like if you're a foreigner. There were these rules that seemed unfriendly. So we tried to put together some comments to tell the Chinese government, essentially, like, well, this is what the American industries and the American lawyers are saying with respect to your law on behalf of this organization. So there's some policy advocacy that we get to do, and of course, bringing people together. And yeah, we have monthly meetings, and now that I'm chair, I have to run these meetings. And the last thing that the organization tries to do is it will organize a trip where actually some people from the organization will visit the country, visit the patent office of that country, and dialogue and meet actual government officials. So you might be meeting actual patent office folks or judges from the patent court and just having a dialogue and just having a communication. So that happens sometimes. It depends if there's COVID, for example, right? So the China team hasn't been able to send a group for probably since before the pandemic. So we're going to try this year, but again, every year there's a lot of factors influencing whether the two sides are able to set up meetings, and it's not always in our control, some of these factors. So we will try because we think there's value in having the two sides work together and meet each other, but we can only do so much sometimes. So that's what I'll probably trying to work on this year is not only running the meetings and commenting and bringing people together, but hopefully trying to plan a trip where we can bring some AIPLA Americans actually over to China and to meet
Mm.
some judges and whatnot.
And the next time you come to the state, I know you were just in Washington, D.C., but the next time you
Oh,
come, maybe we should
yeah,
meet up in
yeah.
person.
That's where you're
And if
based.
I go to Hong Kong, I will definitely look you up.
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely.
Now, you also recently became an adjunct professor at Hong
Ah,
Kong Polytech
yes, yes,
Polytechnic. Is that legal?
yes,
Legal.
yes,
Okay.
yes. It's in
And
Hong Kong.
then you are sort of like co-teaching an IP strategy for biotech entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that class and how you relating that to the concept of mentorship.
Ah, that's a great question. I found out kind of late in life that my superpower, I think we all have superpowers. We just might not know what they are. I was surprised to discover that my superpower was actually public speaking. And as a patent attorney, when you're sitting most of the day drafting patent applications and early in your career, you don't get to do much public speaking. You just don't. That's not part of your job. And as a chemist, you're doing like experiments, you're also not doing public speaking. And it wasn't until I moved to Hong Kong and then as part of being in a firm, which I promised I would never do,
You
that
never be a lawyer
I
too,
right,
but
I
here you
know.
are.
And never working it right. But you have to go out and promote, right? You have to do marketing, you have to go out and try to find business. Like that's just part of the life of private practice. And that involves giving talks. And I started to give talks about just basic patent law here and there. And I was just shocked at the response I was getting. People would, and I've heard this so many times, like I don't even know how many times. Literally, people say, that is the best patent talk I've ever heard in my life. And I hear this over and over again, or I just get a lot of people saying, wow, that was so interesting. I can't believe you made patent law interesting. And so I started to realize that I believe I have the superpower of keeping people awake and engaged. that I really love it, actually. I come alive in a way that doesn't even happen if I'm by myself. Like if I'm giving a talk with no people there, I am not the same. It's kind of weird. It's like Schrodinger's, like you have to look at it and then it's gone. Like it's one of these things where if there's no people there, I will not be as alive. So I realized there's this kind of superpower, and also something I really enjoyed was just speaking to people, inspiring them. And people were inspired. People wanted to learn more about patent law. People wanted to think about how they can protect their inventions or follow this career path. Like it was so interesting. So I knew that I loved teaching, or at least lecturing, or at least speaking and inspiring. And then one thing led to another, and I met, this professor who was building a new program essentially at PolyU. They're very forward thinking in terms of wanting to help people in Hong Kong learn how to apply theoretical knowledge and to actually implement into business, taking IP and inventions and R&D and actually translating it into something that is of business value, right? So part of this comes with taking biotech inventions and learning about all the practical applications. And this master's degree program, which is new, includes there's modules on regulatory and the modules on how do you build manufacturing for biotech, but there is an IP course. And then as I've been promoting our firm's life science expertise, because we do have a very, very strong life science team, it seemed like they thought I was the natural choice if they could and convince me to come to help teach this course. So the other person he knows a lot about regulatory and he's been in the industry for a very long time in a different sort of manner, more in the in-house R&D side. But he convinced me to join him. So I'm co-teaching it with this other industry person. He's a full-time now at PolyU, and he really wanted me to help him teach the IP class. So I agreed. We just finished it actually, the first session or the first semester, just finished it. So it was really great. So you talk about mentorship. It was really cool to speak with these students because I could sense their excitement. They're so young and they've got so much energy and curiosity. And they would all, I don't know, I think after my first 10 or 15 kids came up and all lined up and they all wanted to talk to me. They're so shy. They won't raise their hands in class. It's so hard. And then you think nobody has any questions. And then they all come up afterwards. They're so shy and afraid to speak. So I gotta find a way to get them to speak because it is like 80 students, so it's a little hard to raise your hand. But just the one-on-one conversations, it's just, yeah, I think you don't realize how much of an impact you have sometimes if you're just speaking on stage, unless if you talk to them directly. And I'm thankful that they're willing to come up and speak. This is a new journey for me, to be honest, like this mentoring of students and speaking and having a class instead of just a single lecture. But I can already sense the impact because it happens all like just last week was BIP Asia, Business of IP Asia, a conference in Hong Kong. And I had at least one person come up to me. It's like, you don't know me, but 3 or 4 years ago when you gave that talk at HKU, I was on Zoom and I watched it and it made me realize that IP law was a career that I could follow. And then the next thing you know, he actually went and then he like found a job at a company doing IP law because he had heard my talk. So it's like you just don't know. You just speaking and speaking. Sometimes during the pandemic, it was to a Zoom box and you just felt like nobody was listening to you. But there are a lot of people that are listening and you're making a lot of influence. Maybe you don't even know it. So yeah, I think I'm starting to realize it as I'm getting the feedback, but it reminds me to always be very grounded when you speak, right? To really remember the true purpose behind everything you're talking about. Somebody's listening and they're watching and they will take something away. So every word is a nugget of gold potentially, so don't waste it. And be careful with your words, which is something I need to also control because I love to talk. Sometimes a little bit too much.
So I totally agree with you. I have actually been mentoring, like I have like amazing mentors throughout my life.
Mm, mm.
And part of it is because I am so curious about everything. But
Oh,
when I
that's
was
a
working
gift.
in at a firm before, I didn't have the time. I didn't have time
Oh,
to
yes.
read. I didn't have time to listen to podcasts. I didn't have a lot of
Wow.
time. So one of the
Right.
things during the building of my practice, 5 years is going on to the 6 year, and I really integrate a lot of the Gen Zers, a different generation, but a lot of Gen Zers
Oh,
on my team. And like video editing and social media strategists, they are all in their 20s.
wow. Yes.
And so I would have one-on-one Zoom meeting. And sometimes I was just like, oh, let's do a collab, impromptu, whoever can get on, get on. and I'll
Yeah.
just throw a questions out there for them, and then they
Yeah.
will respond. And then I would either guide it or I'll just let it go, let it flow
Yeah.
wherever it might.
Yeah. Yeah.
So contradictory to my previous personality when I was a case
Oh,
manager.
really?
Yeah, because
Oh,
I am responsible. Well, at least I felt like that. I'm responsible for the product. And if
yeah.
not, my clients and my attorneys might have something to say to me about, right? But this
Right.
one, I have
Right.
more control because I'm the leader of that pack. So that has been really interesting. And what I've really learned about mentorship is that I've actually taken a lot of benefit from the reverse mentoring, like the young
Ah,
ones on the technology was like, I don't know how to do this, blah, blah, blah.
right.
I always
Right.
tell
Right.
them that
Right.
I'm a limited company when it comes to Canvas and I could draft the content there. You guys go
Mm-hmm.
perfect it
Yeah. Yeah.
or make it better. And then I will go in. I say, how do you do a carousel? How do you do this? I have 15 minutes. Let's have on Zoom and then we'll just collab. I
Yeah.
learned that
Yeah.
from another thought leader. Her name is
Oh.
Kristen Hadid.
Oh, okay.
And she was very good in terms of talking about screw up. So she wrote a book
Ah.
about permission to screw up. She
Wow.
used to run a
Mm.
startup when she was in college of a cleaning
Wow.
company, and everybody quit at the same time because
Oh
she
my
was like just
gosh.
hanging out and doing whatever, like taking the
Yeah.
leadership a little bit. And she talked openly
Yeah.
about it, but now she's like a
Ah.
public speaker. But like she literally had everybody quit at the same time and that she
Oh.
really learned about the importance of having the right mindset for a leader, being a leader.
Wow.
So those are the
Wow.
things that I've really learned and what she used to do when she was not as busy in terms of going out there to do public speaking is that
Mm.
we have a community and she will basically let people know we're going to do a 6 a.m. collab. So we got everybody get on. I mean, it's
Wow.
kind of early. Everybody get on and she'll run her playlist
Mm.
and we all just basically be there doing our work, but everybody doing it together.
Oh.
That's really kind of cool.
Was that during the pandemic?
That
Or
was
was it just
during the
because you guys
pandemic.
are, yeah,
She
right? Like you're
hasn't done
together
that.
then.
I've
Yeah.
only seen
Yeah.
her doing more public speaking. I know about her through Simon Sinek, the person who wrote Start With Why. He has
Oh.
a learning platform and he has a podcast called A Bit of Optimism. So I
Oh,
follow
neat.
all those people
Yeah.
and he's a TEDx speaker. And during this 5 years, I've met a lot of people online. And
Yeah.
sometimes I've
Right.
actually met them in real life because after the pandemic
After the
sort of
podcast. Yeah.
closes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
And
right.
the
Right. Right. Right.
podcast,
Right.
we're finishing the cumulative seasons 3 at 95 episodes, 94 and
That's
95.
that's crazy. Good
That
for
is
you.
that
That's
is
not
crazy. And
easy. That's
your
not
superpower is
easy.
public speaking, mine is not.
Well, it's something, organizing and persistence, I think. We
I
tried. We did like a little show, our Eagle IP, and we lasted like 3 episodes and we're like, this is too much work. We just
Well,
stopped.
it is too much work. And so one of the things that is really interesting, you're the first person outside my inner circle. So now you are included in my inner circle, is that I'm putting together a podcast studio.
Oh,
Like
really?
in-person one, yeah. So I just signed a
Wow.
contract. It's a
Wow.
small one, so it's
Mhm.
really been interesting in terms of how I grow because I don't want to sit there and just keep filing for people. I want to
Yeah.
pursue all the other things, and this is my passion. Talking to
Yeah.
people, like the visibility is great, but I also have a platform that I could, for example, starting a writers club for people
Sure.
who are interested in being author. So I did something for Chips
Oh,
with
yeah.
my editor, and we did the self-publishing. So this year we're starting an Urban Raccoons creative hub and
Oh.
that it's basically getting all the creatives together. And I got like Sheena Yap Chan to be a speaker
Oh,
to one of the
nice.
talks.
Nice.
It'll be in June. She just finished a TEDx talk in
Wow.
Manila. So
Wow. Wow.
she had over
Amazing.
900 episodes, 10 years of the Tao of self-confidence. And
Wow.
so
That's
she
crazy.
trained me on my podcasting in the sense that she
That's
coaches
cool.
me when I
Yeah.
didn't have the confidence to do it. So I'm gonna do like some decorating.
Yeah.
A little bit of a personal question. You have a hobby of cooking and going to Michelin or different food. You're a foodie.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about the tiny urban kitchen. How did you get that started? And when did you find the time to do all this?
Oh yeah, the story behind Tiny Urban Kitchen was I was in law school and I was going to school at night and I was working during the day as a patent agent. So my days were pretty full studying. I didn't have that much time for hobbies. So when I graduated, you're in this kind of intense mode where you're used to just doing a lot, and my evenings are all of a sudden free. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't really had time to pursue hobbies. So I just went crazy, actually. I took oil painting lessons. I started this food blog. I learned to sew. So I was making handbags. I signed up for a capoeira class, which is like a Brazilian kind of martial arts dance. I did that for like a year. I said I was going to run a marathon, which by the way, I never did. But again, I
Never
was
say
just
never. It just hasn't come yet.
Thank you. I just actually completed a 10K after like many years of not running. That's another story in and of itself, but I was very excited. I just ran a 10K in Boston. But back to the blog. So I was doing all these different things, right? Because I was just on this release mode from law school and work, right? Now I only had to work, so I had all this extra free time. And interestingly, not all of those stuck forever. And I think I realized part of it is because I am a relational person. And I talked about the importance of relationships. And when you're blogging during the time, this was early, late 2000s, it's like 2007 when I graduated. So it was a time when blogging was a community where people would follow each other's blogs, they would comment on each other's blogs. This was before Facebook, before Instagram, and then people would go to these sites called like Food Gawker to like look at pictures of food. So in that environment, I started to think, what, two things. One, I wanted to capture my mom's recipes because my mom she's always liked to cook. And she was an immigrant who moved to the US who didn't know how to make Chinese food in a US grocery store. So she would creatively think of ways. And I think this was common. People would use Pillsbury dough and just use it to make bao because it
The,
can kind of
the
rise, right?
consistency on that,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of like a bao, right? So these immigrants would buy Pillsbury dough. And so they had these recipes for how to make things. So I would just call my mom and she would tell me how to make all these different kinds of Chinese or Taiwanese dishes. And I wanted to put them down. So that was the reason behind the recipes was really to put down my mom's recipes when I was learning to cook. And then the restaurants, it was just like, well, I need to remember where I ate. So it's really funny because you read the first few blog posts, there's no photos, which in this day would be like blasphemy, like a food blog post with no pictures. But no, back then we just wrote about it, right? And the recipe maybe didn't have pictures. But of course, soon after that, and '09 was when Tiny Urban Kitchen got christened, where I finally looked for domain names and found one that I thought was, ended in .com and seemed kind of cute. I was living in a condo at the time in Cambridge, between MIT and Harvard, actually. So
Mhm.
I had a tiny urban kitchen. So I thought that was kind of descriptive. And people with tiny urban kitchens go out to eat more often, right? So it was kind of like this. I have a tiny urban kitchen. This is what you can cook in a tiny kitchen, but also this is what we eat out type thing. And then that just, yes, that's how I started actually. And then it just, with photography and everything, it just started growing and growing. I won a few competitions, and I think that sort of elevated my blog a bit back in the '09, '10 time period. And then got featured in a few different, like Boston Globe and certain things. So, it got I don't say it became huge. It just became like semi-known, And then of course over time blogging became less popular as Instagram came around and then now it's videos and TikTok and such. So I have maintained at least true to its pure form. I literally still blog. I think a lot less people read it, but it's still there on the internet. I still have my record of where I've eaten and places I visited when I travel. It became a travel blog as well because I started traveling to all these different countries. So I put all the different countries on there. And of course, I started Instagram because I try to keep up. And I moved towards video now a bit more on my Instagram profile. So it's just an outlet. It's fun. I don't watch TV, but I veg by processing photos. So people are like, oh, how are you able to do all this stuff? I was like, I just veg in a different way. Like you watch TV, but I just process photos of food, and that is a way of relaxing, or maybe writing a blog post. So,
Well, the final comment I want to make is, first of all, thank you so much for the time that you take. And I know this
oh,
is
sure.
late and you have so much energy, and I love it. But I did go to Tiny Urban Kitchen's blog post, and what I
Uh-huh.
saw that was really intrigued was like the Totoro egg. That picture of Totoro.
Oh,
And then
I'm
you
a
have a lot
huge
of
Totoro
Totoro
fan.
posts. I went to Studio Ghibli when I was in Japan.
Yeah.
And I do like a lot of Studio Ghibli activities in the US, and Totoro is my a favorite character in
Yes,
Studio
I've got them
Ghibli.
on my desk.
So I saw like the sort. it might be a soy sauce egg or some kind of egg that is in the
Hmm.
shape of Totoro. So I was like,
Yes, yes,
I gotta
yes, yes,
tell
yes.
Jen that I really love that. And I'm going to start reading about your tiny urban kitchen, and maybe it will be reviving all of this and letting people know about this like expat attorney in who never wanted to be an attorney, moved to Hong Kong, not moved back, but moved to Hong Kong, and start having all of this amazing discoveries of herself
Yeah,
and also about the culture and helping the people in Hong Kong, especially the young ones, to
yeah,
understand the other side of the world when things are not so optimistic right now. But I
yeah.
thank you for bringing hope to a lot of people. I'm so glad you became an attorney. I'm so glad you moved to Hong Kong. But we will meet one day,
Yes.
either in Hong Kong and wherever it is, because I do love to travel too. I
Great.
just have not made it. I do not have the consistency to do a travel blog. I thought about vlogging, but I was like, oh, really, I don't like to be on camera actually. So it's really like my superpower is connecting with people.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
glad I can see why people are going up there. So keep doing the great work. Thank you so much for doing what you do and answer to your
Thank
calling.
you. Yes,
You're
thank you so much,
amazing.
Ashley.